I feel misplaced in it. Simply aware. And awareness is a colder prison than these concrete walls will ever be. What even is self-hatred? It's this perception without any sort of anesthesia. It's this optimism that feels like a disorder. Self-acceptance is just a sedation. Self-love, nothing more than a marketing ploy. Pure performance. Something almost comical. And the only sane reaction to all of that, to your consciousness, is the feeling of discomfort. Today I would like to speak about two authors that I feel like they are almost a reflection of each other, and they speak to me on this highly spiritual level. Today we are going to discuss Osamu Dazai and Fernando Pessoa. And both of them left two groundbreaking works, but we'll start of course with Osamu, born in 1909 and he died in 1948. Also, that's when his most well-known book was released. He was born in northern Japan to a very wealthy family, political family, and he had this privilege to him, like privilege without belonging, because he never felt human. Dazai lived like someone slowly getting ready for his own death, and I would say even like disappearance. Throughout his life, he had multiple suicide attempts. It started around his 20s. He had many addictions to alcohol, to morphine. He had turbulent relationships with women. This especially is important, taking into account his eventual demise. And of course, there was this very deep alienation from post-war Japanese society. In 1948, at the age of 38, he died by double suicide with his lover. They drowned in a canal. His final novel, No Longer Human, became one of the most popular, widely read novels in Japan, which is quite funny, taking the core themes of this book. It's about the terror of being fundamentally incompatible with humanity. Yozo, the main protagonist of the book, he survives by performing, almost clowning, smiling, pleasing, and underneath all of that, the only real feeling he has is disgust, shame, terror of being exposed. Dazai wrote at a time when Japan was collapsing from the inside. Right after the war defeat with Americans, there was this cultural disintegration of all the values. With Fernando Pessoa, it's a little different story, because he was born in 1888 and he died in 1935. He was born in Lisbon, and during the day he was a translator, and during the night he felt more like this fragmented universe. Pessoa wrote under many pseudonyms, and he created heteronyms, those fully developed alter egos with their own biographies, with their own philosophies, even handwritings were different. So basically this guy, he multiplied himself, and not for fun. The core self felt insufficient. His most well-known work, the Book of Disquiet, was assembled sometime after his death in 1935. And basically it was this manuscript found in his trunk that contained around 25,000 pages. What was it? It was fragments, notes, observations, existential debris. The core idea behind this book is that our consciousness is quintessentially an exile. Pessoa just distrusted any sort of action. He distrusts identity. He distrusts the idea of being coherent, of coherence in general. For Pessoa, to exist is basically to observe oneself existing, and that the distance became unbearable. He died at 47, and likely from complications related to his alcoholism. Reportedly, his final words were, "I know not what tomorrow will bring," which feels less like uncertainty and more like this total resignation. Those two authors feel extremely reflective of each other, and at the same time there is this contrast, because Dazai's self-hatred is a shame. Pessoa's self-hatred comes from a fragmentation. So Dazai collapses outwardly, like he's being addicted, suicidal, scandalous, and Pessoa collapsed inwardly. This multiplicity, paralysis, abstraction, both orbit the same axis. The suspicion that human beings are just performing, that everything is just one big performance. And basically some people are too aware of the costumes that we carry each day. One drowned in a canal and the other dissolved into fragments. Yozo collapsed because he couldn't pretend to be human anymore. There is of course this grander narrative here, that performance of being human. And the idea is that, what if being human is nothing more than a role? And some of us actually never read the script. In No Longer Human, Yozo survives by becoming quintessentially this clown. Performance is his camouflage, and it shields him from the harshness of reality. There's this performativeness aspect to all of it, which is quite funny, taking into account how popular that term has become in the recent years. So basically, most people are not authentic to themselves. They feel like those socially engineered and optimized masks. The difference is that at some point, they tell the lie for so long that they start to believe their own masks. And Yozo, he doesn't. And that's why he suffers. Like, the self-hatred element here is not "I am worthless," but essentially this is like more fundamental, that I am just incapable with human species. Society usually rejects the unconvincing and not the abnormal ones. Yozo states that if he performed better, he would be considered a part of the system. Pessoa in the Book of Disquiet is not really a tragic hero, not as much like Yozo. He is a man whose consciousness expanded too far inward. And for him, this consciousness is just the evolutionary overreach. Animals act. Humans, we like to narrate things. And Pessoa narrates so much that action becomes almost grotesque. He stated that, "I feel everything so deeply and nothing feels real." And it makes me think about this character from American Beauty, Ricky, but in a more entropic kind of way. So the self is not a stable identity. It is just narrator desperately stitching coherence over this chaos. And sadly, Pessoa sees the stitching, and once you see it, you just can't unsee it. It all ties down to self-hatred. And it is for them, it's the only ethical response to being a member of this violent, performative, delusional species. We consume, we compete, we fantasize our superiority, and we all call it a progress. Self-hatred is mostly the recognition of all of that. To exist is to participate in something obscene, in this obscene play. And I would say this is very Ligotti type of thinking. Life just merely persists and it does not justify itself. And of course, at some point we will cover more in depth the conspiracy against the human race. I don't think I will do it justice here. In No Longer Human, there's also a very important aspect connected with relationships. Basically, Osamu Dazai sees relationships as not salvation. They are another illusion. In Book of Disquiet, love is nothing more than conceptual abstraction. Intimacy is two masks agreeing not to look behind each other's masks, because the truth would expose and would eventually dissolve both parties. So self-hatred makes intimacy impossible. because you assume your core is defective. And it's extremely hard for us people to basically just admit the truth. And perhaps it is. Perhaps, like, what if everyone is just defective? The grim element of all of that, of course, is there's no cosmic tragedy here. There is only this biological persistence, no divine narrative, no grander arc, just organisms aware of their own expiration date. Yozo drinks, Pessoa writes, both are coping with pretty much similar type of horror, that they are just consciousness trapped inside this temporary animal, and self-harm, addiction, unaliving, they are not seen as a failure. They are just miscalculations in attempting to exit a system, and the system doesn't provide you with exit button. Self-hatred is the mind recoiling from all of that realization that we were never designed to understand ourselves, to understand the universe. In the end, there is only fade to black.